Rebecca Collins meticulously prepared for another day at work. With 15 years of experience as a flight attendant, she knew the routine by heart. She donned her dark blue uniform with precision, adjusted her neckerchief, and pinned her blonde hair into a perfect bun. As she looked at herself in the mirror, she checked every detail. Everything seemed normal, just like any other day. That morning's flight was from Charlotte to New York. The aircraft was being readied, and Rebecca joined the other crew members for pre-flight checks. She enjoyed her job, the travel, the quick interactions with passengers, and the sense of control she had while managing the organization within the plane. As passengers boarded, Rebecca observed each one closely. She had a habit of quickly assessing those who boarded, a practice that had become intertwined with her own assumptions and biases over the years. Then she noticed a black man in a police uniform entering the aircraft. He walked confidently to his seat in first class. Rebecca frowned. What is he doing here? She thought, how can he afford to be in first class? Once boarding was complete and the plane was preparing for takeoff, Rebecca approached the man. Her tone was cold, almost accusatory. May I see your ticket, sir? She asked, maintaining a rigid smile, but her eyes betrayed something different. Michael Johnson, who was organizing his belongings, looked at her with a mix of surprise and understanding. He was used to this reaction. Sure, here it is, he said, handing over the ticket with a calm smile. Rebecca took the ticket, scrutinizing it exaggeratedly, as if expecting to find something wrong. But everything was in order. Reluctantly, she handed the ticket back. Thank you, she said, but without the usual warmth. Just wanted to make sure you were in the right place. Michael kept his smile, but there was a glimmer of disappointment in his eyes. No problem, I understand, he said, trying to avoid escalating the situation. He was accustomed to this kind of behavior, but it didn't make it any easier. Rebecca walked away, but something inside her continued to bother her. She found herself glancing at Michael from time to time during the flight, still questioning his presence as if he didn't belong there. As the plane climbed, Rebecca tried to focus on her tasks, but the feeling of discomfort wouldn't leave her. Michael, on the other hand, remained calm in his seat, reading a book and ignoring the curious glances from other passengers. But Rebecca's discomfort grew, setting the stage for what would come next. The flight continued toward New York, with clear skies and a stable aircraft at 35,000 feet. The first-class passengers settled in, enjoying the comfort provided, while Rebecca tried to concentrate on her duties. She served drinks and checked on everyone, but her gaze kept falling on Michael, who remained calm in his seat. She approached him again to serve drinks. Coffee, sir? She asked, trying to keep her tone neutral, but unable to completely disguise the hint of disdain. Yes, please. Black, no sugar. Asterisk, asterisk, Michael replied with a polite smile. As Rebecca prepared the coffee, she couldn't shake off her prejudiced thoughts. She felt an uncomfortable need to understand why a man like him was seated there, as if it were something out of the ordinary. When she delivered the coffee, she couldn't contain herself any longer. I assume you're traveling for work? She asked, trying to sound casual, but her tone was noticeably inquisitive. Michael looked up from his book and met her gaze, aware of what she was implying. Yes, I am. I'm a police officer in Atlanta. He paused, observing her expression before continuing. I'm heading to New York for a conference on public safety. Rebecca tried to mask her surprise. She hadn't expected this answer, and it unsettled her even more. Oh, I see, she said, but her mind was still conflicted. It must be interesting. Michael noticed her discomfort and decided not to prolong the conversation. He was well aware of where it could lead. But before he could return to his book, Rebecca, driven by a curiosity tinged with prejudice, continued. Did the company pay for your first-class ticket? The question slipped out almost unbidden, laden with an insinuation she didn't bother to hide. Michael's face hardened for a moment before he responded. Actually, I paid the difference for first class out of my own pocket. I prefer to travel more comfortably when I can. His response was calm, but there was weight in his words, as if he were trying to maintain dignity in the face of Rebecca's insinuation. Rebecca felt a slight shiver. She had crossed a line, and she knew it, but couldn't help herself. Something inside her still resisted accepting that Michael had as much right as anyone else to be there. I understand, she said, trying to regain control of the situation. "If you need anything else, I'll be around." She quickly walked away, attempting to mask the growing sense of discomfort that now enveloped her. But the conversation hadn't gone unnoticed by other passengers. Some exchanged disapproving glances, having perceived the underlying hostility in Rebecca's interaction with Michael. Michael sighed, returning to his book, but his mind was far away. The veiled hostility he had just encountered was not new, but it still left a mark every time it happened. In the cabin, Rebecca tried to regain her composure. Something in Michael's expression had affected her deeply, as if he had seen through her, perceiving her insecurities and prejudices. She felt exposed, vulnerable, and didn't like it. The minutes that followed seemed to drag. Rebecca kept busy, but the weight of her actions began to settle into her conscience. She knew something was wrong with her behavior, but she still couldn't confront it head-on. The flight continued smoothly above the clouds, but inside the cabin, the tension was palpable. Rebecca tried to avoid thinking about the conversation she had with Michael, but she couldn't shake the uncomfortable feeling that persisted. She was nervous, and it was beginning to reflect in her actions. As she served more drinks and collected trays, Rebecca noticed that some passengers were watching her closely. It was as if they expected more from her, having perceived the hostility in her previous interaction with Michael. Feeling increasingly uncomfortable, she began to avoid looking directly at him, focusing on her other tasks. Two passengers in the row next to Michael, a young couple, began whispering to each other, clearly troubled by what they had witnessed. One of them, a man with a smartphone in hand, appeared to be recording something. Rebecca noticed but couldn't determine if she was being filmed. "Did you see how she spoke to him?" The woman next to the man whispered. "Yeah, that was really strange, completely unnecessary," the man replied, still holding his phone. Rebecca overheard part of the conversation, and her stomach churned. She knew her behavior had been wrong, but now she was worried about the possible consequences. Instead of correcting her actions, she felt the need to justify them to herself. She moved to the front of the cabin, but couldn't concentrate. Her thoughts were on Michael, the couple watching her, and the possibility that she might be on camera. Anxiety began to rise. Meanwhile, Michael, who was trying to continue reading his book, couldn't help but notice the unease around him. He felt the stares, the whispers, and knew something was going on. He had encountered subtle racism before, hidden in acts and words. But what troubled him most now was the feeling of being exposed, watched by everyone. Determined not to let the situation worsen, Michael discreetly caught Rebecca's attention as she passed by his row again. "Flight attendant, can I speak with you for a moment?" His voice was calm, but there was a firmness Rebecca couldn't ignore. She turned, surprised he wanted to start a conversation. "Of course, sir. How can I help?" she replied, trying to maintain her composure. Michael lowered his voice so other passengers wouldn't hear. "I noticed that our last conversation might have left a wrong impression. I just wanted to make it clear that I'm here, as any other passenger, paying for my seat and expecting the same respect. I know your job is to ensure everyone's comfort, and I appreciate that." Michael's words were a soft but precise blow. He wasn't confronting her openly, but was giving her a chance to reflect on her actions. Rebecca felt a pang of shame, but her immediate reaction was defensive. "Sir, I'm just doing my job. There's no need to worry. Everything is under control." She tried to smile, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Michael nodded, but his eyes held hers for a few seconds longer, as if trying to convey something deeper, something that didn't need to be said in words. "I understand. I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page." He leaned back in his seat, ending the conversation. Rebecca walked away, but the exchange of words kept echoing in her mind. The way Michael had handled the situation, polite but assertive, made her feel even smaller in the face of her own conscience. What she didn't know was that the video recorded by the passenger next to her had captured that small but significant moment. Minutes later, during the in-flight service, the couple who had observed the interaction between Rebecca and Michael began sharing the video on social media. They were outraged by the treatment Michael had received, and the story quickly began gaining traction online. What started as a private situation was now about to become a public matter, a storm brewing. As the flight approached New York, Rebecca felt the weight of something she couldn't fully identify, but that made her uneasy. However, the true impact of her actions was just beginning to emerge. When the plane began its descent toward New York's airport, the mood in the cabin was tense. Rebecca felt the weight of anxiety growing with every passing minute, as if something bad was about to happen. She struggled to maintain a professional facade, but her discomfort was evident. As passengers prepared to disembark, Rebecca noticed a growing buzz. More people were looking at their phones, whispering to each other, and occasionally casting quick glances in her direction. The discomfort she had felt during the flight had now turned into a silent panic. Michael, on the other hand, remained calm, though he too sensed the charged atmosphere. He had spent most of the flight trying to ignore the situation, but knew the incident wasn't over. As he stood to retrieve his carry-on bag, he noticed the lingering stares, which only confirmed his suspicions. Once the plane landed, Rebecca hurried to prepare for passenger disembarkation, forcing a tense smile as she guided people off the plane. When Michael passed by her, he looked her in the eyes one last time, with an expression of both exhaustion and understanding. "Have a good day, sir," Rebecca said, forcing a smile that couldn't hide her anxiety. "Thank you. I hope you have a good day too, ***, Michael replied, his calm demeanor contrasting sharply with Rebecca's internal turmoil. After all the passengers had disembarked, Rebecca felt a temporary relief. But that relief quickly turned into growing fear when the flight captain, an older man she had worked with several times before, called her aside for a private conversation. "Rebecca, I need you to come with me," he said, his tone serious and devoid of the usual cordiality. Rebecca followed the captain to a designated area in the airport, where an airline supervisor was already waiting. The supervisor, a middle-aged man with a stern expression, held a tablet in his hands. "Rebecca, we need to talk about an incident that occurred during the flight," the supervisor began, showing her the tablet screen. Rebecca looked at the screen and felt her heart sink. The video of her confrontation with Michael was there, played over and over and already shared by thousands on social media. The caption accompanying the video was direct and condemning. "Flight attendant racist confronts black police officer in first class." The ground seemed to fall out from under her. Everything she had feared was coming true. This isn't what it looks like," Rebecca stammered, desperately trying to find an explanation. "I was just checking." "Rebecca, it doesn't matter what your intention was," the supervisor interrupted firmly. "What matters is how it was perceived, and, honestly, the situation is very serious. The airline is under significant public pressure now. We need to conduct an internal investigation immediately. Until then, you are suspended from your duties." Rebecca felt the words hit her like a physical blow. Suspended? Her mind raced for a way to fix this, but the supervisor's words were final. "Please, I can explain," she began, but her voice sounded weak even to herself. "Rebecca, I know this is difficult, but you need to understand the gravity of the situation," said the supervisor, now calmer but still firm. "For now, the best thing is for you to go home and wait for the company to contact you. We'll keep you updated on the investigation's progress." Rebecca felt tears starting to form, but fought to hold them back. She was in shock. How had her life changed so quickly? What had begun as a routine flight was now about to become a public nightmare. With her shoulders slumped and head down, Rebecca walked away, knowing that the next chapter of her life was about to begin, and she had no idea how she would face what was to come. Rebecca arrived home that same day, exhausted and emotionally drained. She was still in shock over the suspension, but what really scared her was the reaction already unfolding online. When she walked into her small apartment in Charlotte, the first thing she did was turn on her computer and check social media. The video of the incident had already gone viral. The comment section was flooded with reactions of anger and outrage. Words like racist, prejudiced, and unacceptable appeared repeatedly, while others demanded the airline take harsher action. Rebecca's heart raced as she read the comments. She knew the situation was serious, but she hadn't expected it to escalate so quickly and so widely. Fear began to turn into panic. Her phone buzzed, and she saw a text message from a coworker. "Rebecca, have you seen what's happening? The video is everywhere. People are furious. The company will have to make a statement." Rebecca felt a lump in her throat. She tried calling her friend, but the call went straight to voicemail. She was alone to deal with this. A few minutes later, her mother called. "Rebecca, my dear, what's going on? I saw the video. People are attacking you on social media. Are you okay?" Her mother's voice was filled with concern. "I don't know, Mom. I don't know what to do." Rebecca's voice trembled. "I didn't mean to. It wasn't what I intended. Everything is out of control. This will pass, dear. But you need to be strong now. Maybe you should make a public statement, explain what happened." Rebecca hesitated. She knew anything she said could be misinterpreted, but she also knew she needed to do something to try to manage the situation. After ending the call with her mother, Rebecca opened her Twitter account. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, but she couldn't think of anything to say. Everything seemed either empty or desperate. Finally, she typed, "I am deeply sorry for what happened. I am reflecting on my actions and know I need to do better. It was not my intention to offend anyone, but I acknowledge the impact my words had. I am willing to learn and grow from this." She read and reread the message several times before finally hitting send. Immediately, the comments began pouring in. Some were supportive, but many others were critical, accusing her of only apologizing because she had been exposed. At the same time, news about the incident continued to spread. Newspapers and TV channels began covering the story, and the pressure on the airline increased. Some civil rights lawyers and activists also started commenting on the case, highlighting the importance of addressing racism at all levels of society. On the other side of the city, Michael Johnson was at home, trying to process everything that was happening. He knew the video had gone viral, but he was surprised by how quickly the situation had escalated. His phone wouldn't stop ringing, with messages from friends, colleagues, and even journalists seeking a statement. Michael was reluctant to speak about the incident. He didn't want to be seen as seeking attention or revenge. He was more interested in fostering a meaningful conversation about racism and prejudice. But he also knew that, in the heat of the moment, his words could be misinterpreted. Finally, he decided to make a simple statement on his social media page. "As many of you have seen, an incident occurred during a recent flight. While what happened is unfortunate, I hope we can use this moment to reflect on how we treat each other, regardless of color or social class. We need more dialogue and understanding and less judgment. Let's work together to create a fairer and more equal world." The reaction to his post was overwhelmingly positive. People praised his calmness and dignity, and many began to urge him to become more involved in discussions about social justice. Rebecca, on the other hand, continued to face a storm of criticism. She knew she had made a mistake, but she still didn't know how she could fix it. With each passing hour, the weight of the consequences became more unbearable. What had begun as a simple lapse in judgment was turning into a turning point in her life, forcing her to confront her own flaws and the prejudices she harbored. The days following the incident were a whirlwind of emotions for Rebecca. She felt isolated, as if the world was falling apart around her. The phone rang incessantly, with calls from reporters, acquaintances, and even strangers. Social media was still flooded with criticism, and her attempt at a public apology seemed to do little to ease the situation. One morning, a week after the flight, Rebecca received a call she knew was coming, but that still left her shaken. It was her supervisor. "Rebecca, we need you to come to the office immediately," he said, his tone leaving no room for discussion. With her heart racing, Rebecca got ready and headed to the airline's office. The journey was a blur of anxiety. When she arrived, she was taken directly to the meeting room, where she found her supervisor and two other company executives, all with serious expressions. "Rebecca, I'll be straightforward," began the supervisor, taking a deep breath. "The company has decided that you will be suspended indefinitely until the investigation is completed. Given the fallout from the incident, we cannot allow you to continue working at this time." Rebecca felt a wave of despair engulf her. She knew this was a possibility, but hearing the words out loud was devastating. Trying to maintain her composure, she replied, "I understand that my actions were inappropriate and I want to fully cooperate with the investigation. But please understand that I never intended to harm anyone. I was just doing my job." "Rebecca," said one of the executives with a softer but equally firm voice. "We understand that you are remorseful. But the truth is, the impact of your actions goes far beyond your intentions. We need to show the public and our employees that we take these issues seriously. That's why this suspension is necessary." Rebecca lowered her head, feeling tears welling up. But she didn't want to cry in front of them, didn't want to seem even weaker. I just want to make things right, she whispered, almost to herself. The supervisor paused, as if weighing his words before responding. "Rebecca, there's a chance for redemption, but it will largely depend on what you do next. This suspension doesn't have to be the end of your career, but you'll need to work hard to regain the trust of everyone. The company, the passengers, and the public at large." Rebecca nodded, though his words felt hollow at that moment. All she could think about was how her life was turned upside down, and she had no idea how to set it right again. "Thank you," she murmured, getting up from her chair. "I'll do whatever it takes." With that, she left the room, feeling as if the weight of the world was on her shoulders. When she returned home, emptiness awaited her. The silence was deafening, and Rebecca finally let the tears fall. She collapsed onto the couch, clutching a pillow as if it were the only thing anchoring her to reality. Days later, with the suspension officially in effect, Rebecca was left alone with her thoughts. Without the distraction of work, she was forced to confront the gravity of her actions and the deep flaws in her beliefs. Every piece of news about the incident reminded her of how she had failed, not only Michael, but also herself. One afternoon, while browsing the internet, Rebecca came across a video of Michael. He was being interviewed, calmly discussing the incident and the need for greater understanding and less prejudice in society. "What happened on that flight isn't just about me," Michael said in the video. "It's about what many people face every day in different forms. I hold no grudges, but I believe it's time we start having tough conversations and making real changes." His words resonated deeply with Rebecca. She realized that, while she had been consumed with her own situation, she had not considered the impact her actions might have had on Michael and others who face prejudice daily. This realization was a turning point for Rebecca. She knew she needed to do more than just apologize. She needed to change. She began searching online for resources on social justice, reading articles and watching videos about racism and prejudice. With each new piece of information, she felt increasingly ashamed of what she had done, but also more determined to do better. However, Rebecca knew that reading and learning would not be enough. She had to find a way to act, to show that she was genuinely remorseful and willing to become a better person. But where to start? That was a question she still couldn't answer. During her suspension, Rebecca found herself isolated from the world she knew. Without the routine of work, the days dragged on, and the solitude in her Charlotte apartment became unbearable. The silence was a constant reminder of what had happened, and shame consumed her. One morning, as she was making coffee, Rebecca was flooded with memories from her childhood. She had grown up in a small town in North Carolina, where her parents held traditional and conservative views. She had grown up hearing derogatory comments about people of other races and cultures. At the time, she hadn't questioned these opinions, absorbing them as part of the environment in which she lived. Sitting at the kitchen table, Rebecca got lost in thought, recalling a conversation she had with her father when she was a teenager. "Remember, Rebecca," he used to say with an authoritative tone, "the world is divided into those who have and those who don't. And those who have should always remember to protect what's theirs." Those words echoed in her mind, and for the first time, she felt the weight of the beliefs she had carried ever since. She began to question everything, her attitudes, her values, and how she had allowed prejudice to influence her life and actions. Rebecca picked up her phone and dialed her mother's number, who had always been her safe harbor in difficult times. When her mother answered, her familiar voice provided immediate comfort, but also a sense of imminent confrontation. "Hi, Mom," Rebecca began hesitantly. "Hi, dear. How are you?" Her mother's voice was gentle, but carried an evident concern. "I'm reflecting on a lot of things. About how I was raised, the things I learned. I realized that maybe I absorbed some ideas that weren't right." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and Rebecca could feel the tension rise. What do you mean by that? Her mother asked cautiously. I mean that I've been reflecting on what happened with that passenger, the police officer, and I realized that my behavior, my attitudes, are the result of a worldview I never questioned before. But I want to change that, Mom. I need to change. Her mother was silent for a moment before responding. Rebecca, you've always been a good person. We taught you to be strong, to not let anyone walk all over you. But you also have to understand that the world is complex, and not everything is black and white. It's good that you're questioning things now, but don't be too hard on yourself. Everyone makes mistakes. I know, Mom, Rebecca replied, her voice trembling. But it's not just about a mistake. It's about a way of thinking that I never questioned, and that can't continue. After hanging up, Rebecca felt a mix of relief and sadness. She knew her reflections were leading her down a difficult but necessary path. In the days that followed, she immersed herself in books, documentaries, and articles about racism, white privilege, and social justice. Each page turned, each video watched was like a lens that helped her see the world in a completely new way. One night, while watching a documentary about the civil rights struggle in America, Rebecca found herself crying. The stories of injustice, oppression, and suffering of Black people deeply touched her, and she felt ashamed for having ignored these realities for so long. At the same time, she felt a growing desire to do something meaningful to make a change. She remembered Michael's words in the interview. We need more dialogue and understanding, and less judgment. Those words haunted her, and Rebecca knew she needed to find a way to start that dialogue, not just with others, but with herself. Determined to do something concrete, Rebecca decided to look for awareness groups and training on prejudice and racial discrimination. She knew that she could only become a better person if she deeply understood the roots of her own prejudices and actively worked to overcome them. The following week, she found an online course offered by a social justice organization in Charlotte. The course promised to address issues of systemic racism and how to combat it in everyday life. Without hesitation, Rebecca enrolled, knowing that it would be just the first step in a long journey of self-discovery and change. As she started the course, Rebecca felt nervous but hopeful. Each session brought new revelations, and with each passing day, she felt her heart open a little more. She began to understand that while remorse was painful, it was also a gateway to growth. I'm changing, Rebecca thought to herself as she took notes on important points from the lessons. And I will keep changing, because that's what I need to do, because it's the right thing to do. After weeks of reflection and learning, Rebecca knew she had to do more. She needed to meet with Michael Johnson, the man she had treated so unfairly. She needed to look him in the eyes and apologize, not just for her behavior on the flight, but for all the years her prejudices had blinded her. It was a daunting task, but she knew it was necessary. One afternoon, gathering her courage, Rebecca decided to find Michael. She searched for his name online and discovered he worked at a police precinct in Charlotte. She decided to show up at his workplace, even though she knew it might be uncomfortable for both of them. The next day, dressed simply and with her heart racing, Rebecca drove to the precinct. When she arrived, she paused in front of the building for a moment, taking a deep breath before getting out of the car. Each step toward the entrance felt heavier than the last. Her throat felt dry and her hands were sweaty, but she kept walking. Upon entering, she approached the reception desk. "Hello. How can I help you?" asked the receptionist with a professional smile. "Hi, my name is Rebecca Collins," Rebecca said, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm here to speak with Officer Michael Johnson." The receptionist looked at her for a moment before responding. "Do you have an appointment with him?" "No, I don't. But it's personal. It's very important," Rebecca said, feeling the weight of her words. The receptionist hesitated, but eventually called Michael's office. After a brief conversation, she nodded and told Rebecca to wait. A few minutes later, Michael appeared at the lobby door. He was in uniform, with a look of surprise when he saw Rebecca there. They stared at each other for a moment, the silence heavy between them. Rebecca took a step forward, trying to find the right words. "Officer Johnson," she began, her voice nearly faltering. "I know I don't have the right to ask for anything, but I need to talk to you. Please. Michael observed her for a moment, his eyes serious but not cold. He nodded. Let's go outside then, he said, gesturing toward the door. They exited the building and walked to a bench out front where they sat down. Rebecca felt exposed and vulnerable, but she knew this was part of the process. I've been thinking a lot about what happened on that flight, Rebecca began, struggling to maintain her composure. And I realized that what I did was wrong on so many levels. I treated you in a horrible, prejudiced way, and I want you to know that I am deeply sorry. Michael remained silent, watching her as she spoke. Rebecca continued, I grew up with ideas and prejudices I never questioned, and that shaped the person I became. But since the incident, I've been working to change. I've taken courses, read about racism, and am trying to understand and dismantle these prejudices I carry. And I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for hurting you, for acting so ignorantly. Her words came out choked, the emotion evident in her voice. Michael finally took a deep breath and responded. Rebecca, I appreciate that you came here. I won't lie, what happened that day hurt me. Not just because you judged me, but because it reminded me of all the other times I've been judged in the same way. But, he paused, searching for the right words. But I also know that people can change. I've seen it happen. The question is, do you really want to change? Or is this just because of the pressure you're feeling right now? Rebecca felt his words like a punch in the stomach, but she knew he was right to question her. I understand why you're asking me that, she said, with tears in her eyes. And all I can say is that I want to change, not because of the pressure, not because of my career, but because I realized that the world I knew, the way I saw things, was wrong. And that's something I need to correct for myself and for those around me. Michael looked at her for a long moment before finally letting out a sigh. True change isn't easy, he said. It's a long and painful process. But if you're really committed, then maybe something good can come out of all this. What's most important now is what you do from here on out. Rebecca nodded, feeling a tremendous weight lift from her shoulders, but still knowing that the road ahead would be difficult. Thank you for listening to me, she said, feeling the sincerity in her words. And thank you for giving me this chance to apologize. Michael gave a small smile, a gesture of goodwill that, to Rebecca, meant the world. Take care, Rebecca, he said as he stood up. And if you need help on this journey, I'm here. Rebecca watched him walk away, feeling a mix of relief and determination. She knew that this meeting was just the beginning, but for the first time, she felt like she was on the right path. What she did next would be crucial, not only for her own redemption, but for the person she wanted to become. Rebecca spent the following week preparing for the next stage of her journey. The conversation with Michael about racism, prejudice, and the need for change. She was determined to do more than just apologize. She wanted to deeply understand the impact of her actions and learn how she could contribute to a more just world. Michael had agreed to Rebecca's proposal for a longer, more detailed conversation, and they arranged to meet at a local cafe in Charlotte. The atmosphere of the place was calm, with soft lighting and a relaxed environment, providing the perfect setting for a difficult and important discussion. When Rebecca arrived, Michael was already seated at a table by the window. He stood up and greeted her with a nod. She noticed a serious expression, but also a faint smile that seemed to acknowledge the effort she had made. Thank you for coming, Michael, Rebecca said as she took her seat. I really appreciate you taking the time for this. Of course, Rebecca. I thought it was important for us to have this conversation. Michael replied, adjusting his chair. It's a crucial step for both of us, I think. Rebecca smiled back, relieved that he was open to dialogue. She ordered a coffee, and while waiting, she began to talk about what she had learned over the past weeks. I've been reading a lot about racism and how it manifests in everyday life, and also about how structural prejudice affects not only the victims, but society as a whole. She said, trying to stay calm. I realized how important it is to recognize one's own privilege and how our actions can perpetuate injustice, even without intending to. Michael listened attentively, his expression a mix of curiosity and evaluation. It's good to see that you're striving to understand deeply, he said after a moment of silence. But sometimes, intellectual understanding isn't enough. What really matters is how you apply that knowledge in the real world. Rebecca nodded, acknowledging Michael's point. I understand, and that's exactly why I'm here. I want to know how I can be a better ally, how I can help promote real change. Michael took a deep breath, seemingly weighing the best way to respond. A key part of it is listening to the experiences of people directly affected by racism, he began. And that means not just hearing, but truly trying to understand the pain and struggle they face. Often, we listen but don't do anything with the information. Rebecca made a mental note and looked at him seriously. So, what are some of the ways I can take action? How can I turn what I've learned into concrete actions? Michael considered the question for a moment before responding. Participating in sensitivity training and helping to promote these discussions in your workplace is a good start. But it's also important to get involved in community initiatives, support organizations that fight against injustice, and above all, use your voice to advocate for equality. Rebecca reflected on these suggestions, feeling a growing determination. I've already started looking for volunteer opportunities and will continue educating myself on these topics. But is there anything specific you think I should know or do? Michael hesitated for a moment before answering. Perhaps the most important thing is to be transparent and authentic about your journey. Often, people try to hide their mistakes or downplay the impact of their actions. Publicly acknowledging your errors and showing genuine effort to change can inspire others to do the same. Rebecca looked at Michael with a mix of admiration and gratitude. I'll keep that in mind. I'll work to be transparent and continue learning. And I want to ensure that my change is genuine, not just a temporary effort. The coffee arrived, momentarily interrupting their conversation. They began drinking, and the atmosphere became a bit more relaxed. Michael smiled more comfortably. You're on the right path, Rebecca. Change doesn't happen overnight, but the fact that you're willing to face it head-on is a big step. Rebecca smiled, relieved to receive support and understanding. Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate your patience and willingness to help me understand better. I'll do my best to apply what I've learned and to be a more effective ally. The conversation continued, with Michael sharing more about his experiences and challenges as a Black police officer. Rebecca asked questions and listened attentively, absorbing every detail. By the end of the meeting, Rebecca felt more hopeful than she had in the previous days. She knew there was still a long road ahead, but the honest dialogue and Michael's guidance had inspired her to continue her journey with a renewed sense of purpose. It was a pleasure talking with you, Rebecca, Michael said as he stood up to say goodbye. I hope our conversation was helpful. Keep up the good work, and don't hesitate to reach out if you need more support. I will, Michael. Thank you for everything. Rebecca replied before leaving the cafe with a new sense of determination and hope. Rebecca's transformation was just beginning. Her honest conversation with Michael had motivated her to actively engage in the fight against racism and social injustice. She was determined to apply what she had learned and to become a true ally. In the following days, Rebecca began getting involved in social justice initiatives in Charlotte. She participated in trainings on racism and discrimination and started volunteering with a local organization dedicated to racial equality. She also made a point of attending community meetings and listening to the experiences of those directly affected by racism. One evening, Rebecca attended a community event on racial justice. The hall was filled with people from diverse backgrounds, all gathered to discuss and learn about ways to. Rebecca sat down next to Michael at a community event on racial justice. Michael was there to share his experiences as a Black police officer. As Michael spoke to the group, Rebecca watched closely. He was articulate and passionate, and his words resonated with the audience. After his talk, there was a Q&A session. Rebecca seized the opportunity to ask a question, her heart pounding. Michael, you mentioned the importance of getting involved in community initiatives and supporting organizations against racism. I'd like to know more about how I can make a meaningful difference in my community. What are the best ways to use my position and resources to support these causes? Michael looked at Rebecca with a smile of recognition, pleased with her commitment. Great question, Rebecca. One important way is to support and amplify the voices of those affected by racism. This can mean collaborating with community leaders and local organizations, hosting educational events, and, of course, financially contributing to causes you believe in. Rebecca quickly took notes, eager to apply these suggestions. I really want to do that. Are there any organizations or movements you recommend I look into in Charlotte? She asked. Michael listed several notable organizations, including groups that worked with at-risk youth and programs offering legal support for victims of discrimination. Also, Michael added, consider starting discussions about these topics within your own circle of influence. Whether at work, with friends, or in social groups, awareness and dialogue are powerful tools for sparking change. Rebecca thanked Michael for his guidance and felt inspired to continue her efforts. The following week, she began organizing an awareness event at her workplace, inviting experts and activists to discuss diversity and inclusion. During the preparation for the event, Rebecca contacted one of the community organizers Michael had recommended. They discussed the possibility of partnering with a local organization to extend the event's reach. The collaboration was well received, bringing new resources and perspectives to the project. The day of the event arrived, and the hall was filled with colleagues, friends, and community members. Rebecca opened the event by sharing her own journey and emphasizing the importance of confronting and overcoming prejudice. We're here today not just to learn about racism and discrimination, Rebecca began with a firm voice, but to commit to being agents of change. Each of us has a role to play in creating a fairer and more inclusive society. Michael also participated, sharing his personal experience and engaging with the audience during a Q&A session. The interaction between him and Rebecca was evident, and their collaboration showed that reconciliation and understanding were possible. After the event, many attendees approached Rebecca to express their support and interest in continuing the dialogue. Rebecca felt satisfied to see the positive impact the discussion was having, not just in her life, but in others as well. One night, after a busy day, Rebecca and Michael met again for coffee. It was a moment of reflection and celebration of the progress made. I just wanted to thank you again, Michael, Rebecca said, stirring her coffee. If it weren't for our conversation and your guidance, I wouldn't have found my way to this. No need to thank me, Michael replied with a smile. You did the hard work, and that's what matters. Seeing the impact you're making is truly rewarding. Just keep up the good work and stay determined. Rebecca nodded, feeling a wave of gratitude and accomplishment. I will, and I'll keep learning and doing my best to promote justice and inclusion. Thank you for standing by me on this journey. Michael raised his cup in a toast. To progress and change. May we continue to make a difference, one step at a time. As they toasted, Rebecca felt a deep sense of purpose and hope. Her journey of self-discovery and change was far from over, but she knew she was on the right path. And with people like Michael by her side and the support of the community, she was ready to face the challenges and make a difference. The airline's internal investigation into Rebecca's behavior was in its final stages. Rebecca had undergone a period of suspension and had been actively involved in community initiatives and sensitivity programs. Now, she was anxiously awaiting the company's decision about her future. At the airline's headquarters in Charlotte, the review committee was gathered in a conference room, discussing the final report of the investigation. Among the committee members were the Chief Human Resources Officer, the Operations Manager, and the Director of Diversity and Inclusion. The decision would be crucial not only for Rebecca, but also for the company's reputation. So, are we all in agreement about the report and recommendations? Asked Robert Hayes, the Director of Diversity and Inclusion, adjusting his glasses. Yes, the report is thorough, replied Karen Lee, the Chief Human Resources Officer. Rebecca has made significant progress and demonstrated a genuine commitment to change. The question now is whether or not she should return to her position. I believe she should, interjected Operations Manager Laura Thompson. She has been suspended long enough to reflect and re-educate herself. And the way she has engaged in community and educational activities shows that she is making a real effort. But we need to consider the impact on the team and our public image, Robert added. Some employees and passengers might still be dissatisfied with our response to the incident. We must ensure that any decision we make is clearly communicated and demonstrates our commitment to equality and respect. After an extensive discussion, the committee reached a consensus. The decision was to give Rebecca a second chance, with the condition that she continued to engage in awareness activities and promote diversity initiatives within the company. The next day, Rebecca was called in for a meeting with the committee. The tension was palpable as she entered the room and sat down in front of the group. Karen Lee, with a serious expression, began to speak. "Rebecca, thank you for your patience during this process. The committee has reviewed your case and the internal investigation report. We would like to discuss the decision we have reached." Rebecca felt a knot in her stomach, but maintained a composed demeanor. "I'm ready to hear it," she said, trying to stay calm. "After considering your efforts to re-educate yourself and engage in community activities," Karen continued, "the committee has decided to allow your return to work. However, we want you to know that this comes with certain conditions." "What are these conditions?" Rebecca asked, a mix of anticipation and apprehension in her voice. "First, you will be responsible for leading and implementing diversity and inclusion programs within the company," Laura explained. "This includes organizing regular training sessions and promoting events that foster a more inclusive work environment." Rebecca nodded, understanding the importance of these responsibilities. "Additionally," Robert added, "you will undergo periodic evaluations of your progress. This will help us ensure that you continue to make efforts and grow. It will also be important for you to maintain a proactive stance on any feedback or constructive criticism." "Got it," Rebecca said with determination. "I'm committed to meeting these conditions and continuing to learn and promote inclusion within the company." The committee seemed satisfied with her response. Karen offered a faint smile. "We look forward to having you back at work. Your first task will be to work with our diversity team to review and update our sensitivity training programs. We're confident that you can make a difference." Rebecca stood up and thanked the committee for the opportunity. She felt a mix of relief and a renewed sense of responsibility. It was an important step, but also a significant challenge. "Thank you all. I will do my best to meet expectations and help create a more inclusive work environment." Rebecca said sincerely. As she left the room, Rebecca felt eager to return to work and start implementing the necessary changes. She knew there was still much to do, but she was ready to face the challenges ahead. Returning to work wasn't just an opportunity to make amends, but a chance to lead change and inspire others to follow suit. In the following days, Rebecca began working with the diversity and inclusion team to develop new programs and training. She was determined to make a difference and prove that her transformation was genuine. The task was challenging, but Rebecca was motivated to work hard to create a fairer and more inclusive environment for everyone. The day of Rebecca's return to work had finally arrived. The airline's office in Charlotte was buzzing with activity, and Rebecca felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. She had prepared for this moment, not only to resume her duties, but also to lead initiatives that promoted inclusion and respect. Rebecca walked into the office and was greeted with smiles and hellos from her colleagues. The environment felt a bit more welcoming, with new posters about diversity and inclusion adorning the walls. She made her way to her office, where she found a welcome email from her colleagues and an invitation to a meeting with the diversity and inclusion team. At the meeting, Rebecca met her team and Marissa Green, the diversity manager, who had been a key player in developing the new programs. "Good morning, team." Marissa started with a warm smile. "It's great to see everyone here. Today marks Rebecca's return, and we want to make sure this new phase starts off as smoothly as possible." Rebecca smiled, grateful for the warm welcome. "Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to start this new chapter and work with all of you to make a difference." Rebecca said sincerely. Marissa gave a brief overview of the new programs Rebecca would be leading and discussed the goals for the coming months. "Rebecca, we have some events planned for the next few weeks, including a sensitivity workshop and a diversity panel discussion," Marissa explained. "It would be great if you could lead these events and also help develop new training materials." "Absolutely. I'm here for whatever you need," Rebecca replied, showing her enthusiasm. After the meeting, Rebecca headed to the conference room where the first sensitivity workshop was to be held. She found the room filled with employees, all eager to participate. Michael was present to offer his support and share his experiences. "Michael, it's great to have you here," Rebecca said, shaking his hand firmly. "Your presence means a lot to me and the team." "I'm here to support however I can," Michael responded with a smile. and I'm excited to see the positive impact these events will have. Rebecca began the workshop with a brief introduction, sharing her own journey and what she had learned along the way. I'm here today because I believe change starts with awareness and education. We all have a role to play in creating a more inclusive and respectful environment. Rebecca told the attentive audience. The workshop was a success, with many productive discussions and positive feedback from participants. Rebecca realized that, despite the challenges, the positive impact she was beginning to create was very rewarding. After the event, Michael approached Rebecca, who was chatting with some attendees. "You did an excellent job today," Michael praised. "The participants were really engaged, and it seems like the message is being well received." "Thank you, Michael. I really hope this is just the beginning of a more lasting impact." Rebecca replied with a satisfied smile. As Rebecca continued to settle into her new role, she began to see the fruits of her labor. The diversity and inclusion programs were being well received, and there was a growing sense of camaraderie and respect in the workplace. On a quiet afternoon, Rebecca received an email from a colleague, thanking her for the positive impact she had made. The email mentioned how the changes were creating a more welcoming environment and how employees were more open to discussing diversity issues. Rebecca read the email with a satisfied smile, and as she looked out the window of her office, she reflected on the journey she had been on. She knew there was still much work to be done, but she felt grateful for the opportunity to make a difference. That evening, Rebecca met Michael for coffee again at the cafe where they had their initial conversation. They talked about the progress and the impact they were seeing. "I'm so happy with the progress we've made," Rebecca said, looking at Michael. "It's amazing to see how small changes can really transform a work environment. And the most important thing is that you're doing this with an open heart and a genuine desire to change," Michael replied. "You're inspiring others to follow your example, and that's something to be proud of. I wouldn't have made it this far without your support and guidance." "Thank you for that," Rebecca said gratefully. Michael lifted his coffee cup in a symbolic toast. "To the future and the positive changes yet to come," he said. Rebecca raised her own cup with a smile of hope and determination. "To the future and to a fairer and more inclusive world." As they toasted, Rebecca felt that the path she had chosen was being rewarded. She was ready to face future challenges and continue to promote inclusion and equality. Her journey of personal transformation had become a life mission, and Rebecca was prepared to make a difference, one step at a time.